Hi, I'm Liz Buchanan with NielsenIQ, along with Mark Baum from FMI, and you're listening to the CPG Guys podcast.
Welcome to the CPG Guys podcast. Your hosts, Shri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the CPG Guys podcast. I'm, of course, Shri, co-founder, co-host of the CPG Guys, co-founder and partner at Thinkblue, your key to unlocking your profitability potential. As builders, connectors, and amplifiers, we shape the future of commerce to drive your growth. Please do listen to my older daughter, Ria Raj's music, www.riaraj.com, younger daughter, Lara Raj, as a member of the Geffen Records Universal Music Group, Cat's Eye, and they've just announced their tour of the Jingle Ball series in Dallas and Boston in December. Their hit single Touch is now at 105 million plus plays on Spotify and is qualified to be the first multi-platinum single for the band. Joining me today is Peter V.S. Bond, and when he's not co-hosting this podcast, he serves as Partnership Acceleration Lead at Flywheel, a division of Omnicom that helps enterprise brands improve their SEO and SEM, growing their e-commerce businesses. Mr. Bond, Rivalry Day is today at the time of this recording. By the time this episode is released, Rivalry Day, Rivalry Week will be over. We'll know who wins the World Series. Looking forward to your visit over to California tomorrow as we hit up 4 games of Yankees and Dodgers. May the slug force be with you. How you doing, man?
Well, I'm sad and I'm happy, Shri. I'm sad because in the midst of all this excitement for our teams to meet in the World Series, we lost a great one this week. Fernando Valenzuela, the ace pitcher, Rookie of the Year back in 1981 that helped carry the Dodgers on to victory against their rivals, the New York Yankees. He passed away. He'd been a broadcast journalist calling all of the Dodger games in Spanish for quite a number of decades. We lost him. I think the Dodgers have got a lot of motivation to try and win it this year in his honor. I'm excited about joining you in LA and then you joining me in New York. To watch our two teams battle it out. There are no two greater teams that could go to meet each other in the World Series than the Yankees and the Dodgers. It will be an epic series, and I am quite looking forward to it.
Like I said, may the slug force be with you. Between Stanton, Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Judge, hopefully the bat will get revived again. And, of course, none other than the great Juan Soto. Even Gleyber Torres is hitting 350.
Let's not forget Kike, Mr. October, Kike Hernandez.
Mr. October Stanton. So we got enough going on. Like I said, may the slug force be with you. But in any event, before we get to our guests, we want to ask you to consider following us in your preferred podcast listening app if you already don't do so. But, of course, only at 50-plus platforms. This will ensure you automatically receive new episodes as they're released. And while you're at it, follow our sister podcast, the FMCG Guys, and of course, CPG Scoop with Risa and Jennifer. This year, we're partnering with Drugstore News on December 4th at the iconic Lincoln Center on the annual Issues Summit in its 21st edition. We will be co-presenting 8 awards at the event in the health and beauty care space to both brands and retailers. We're also partnering with the Path to Purchase Institute on the annual Omni Shopper Award, Chicago, November 14th. Where a select group of winners will feature also on the CPG Guys post the breakfast award ceremony. To be part, sponsor, get in touch with us. Contact at cpgguys.com. For Drugstore News, you can also get in touch with John Kenlin. For the Path to Purchase Institute, you can also get in touch with Eric Savage. Announcing the first retail media executive education program in our industry from May 5th to 8th, 2025 at Cornell Tech. The CPG Guys are partners for this immersive 4-day program that brings together industry thought leaders and renowned faculty to share best practices for building compelling retail media platforms. To discover how to collaborate on creating best-in-class stacks, measure performance to ensure brands access the necessary KPIs based on campaign objectives, establish strong partnerships between brands and retailers, and in addition, the program will cover optimizing brand strategies using AI-driven campaign design at scale to achieve marketing goals. Links to our podcast, our sister cast, social media profiles of my daughters, Ria and Laura, my wife's podcast, how to register for the PDPI Live or DSN Issues Summit, or for more information on the Cornell Retail Media Program. You can find all of those in the digital liner notes of this episode. And now for the main event special. Retail media is upon us. Whether we like it or not, retail media is one of the most important budget-anchored topics in the CPG and retail industry at this time, whether it be measurement, tactics, ad inventory, execution. Time after time, we see differences in how this is playing out for both brands and retailers. The CPG guys have had the honor of hosting Who is Who from Retail Media, Christy from Albertsons Media Collective, Seth and Ryan from Walmart Connect, Kara from KPM 8451, several leaders from Amazon Ads, just recorded David McIntosh late earlier today from Instacart, and so many more leaders from the space. So we decided to interview none other than two individuals in the middle of working with the retail and CPG industry and work going on some important research and reporting in this space. I won't take away the surprise on what to expect. We decided to ask him directly. So let's welcome Liz Buchanan, President of North America for NielsenIQ, and Mark Baum, our dear friend, CCO for none other than FMI. Together, they're working on a CPG and retail industry's state of retail media research. Let's welcome to the CPG guys. Liz, how's it going today?
Hey, Sri. Hey, Peter. Good. Really glad to be here. Nice to be with you all, and always fun to be in conversation with Mark as well.
Mark, welcome to the CPG guys. Your first time on the CPG guys, 4 more appearances, and you earn automatically our famous Letterman CPG guys jacket.
Well, thanks, Ree. I hope that you'll invite me back after you hear what I have to say today. But I've got Liz as my co-pilot, so I think we'll be fine. Loved your opening salvo. I'm a longstanding Bronx Bombers fan, so you know where I see the series going. But great to be with you and looking forward to the conversation. Liz and I have been collaborating on some really important work, and we're pleased to be able to share it this morning.
May the slug force be with you as well, Mark. Let's go Yankees. But before we get to the detailed questions that I've prepared for both of you, Liz, it would be great if you give us a brief overview of NielsenIQ and your role there, please.
Sure, absolutely. NielsenIQ is the world's leading provider of consumer intelligence, and we really aim to cover the consumer goods industry broadly, consumer goods and retail, so inclusive of fast-moving consumer goods, gen merch, tech, and durable goods. We have a footprint in just about 100 countries around the world, and I lead our North American business, which is inclusive of our retail relationships, our CPG relationships, as well as some expanded verticals that we've been investing in, like financial services, government, agencies, and increasingly, as we've begun to participate again in media following our split from Nielsen Media in 2021, getting much more involved in our global media division and its role in helping U.S. retailers in particular and U.S. CPGs in particular with this big emerging space of retail media networks.
Thank you, Liz. Mark, I will request you to do the same as CCO of FMI.
Of course, I'd be delighted. Thanks, Sri. So FMI is an international trade association. We have members in 170 countries around the world. We tend to be North American and even more U.S.-centric. We represent food industry retailers, wholesalers, and manufacturers, and we have a plethora of service providers and advisory partners that we do business with as well. We kind of see the world through 3 lenses. So we advocate, we collaborate, we communicate, and we also educate. So maybe 4 lenses. On the advocacy side, we really are very involved in policy at both the federal, state, and local level from a legislative, regulatory standpoint as well. We're not located in Washington, D.C. by accident. We are just adjacent to our nation's government. On the education and communication side, we have a large portfolio of events, both in-person and virtual, that really lean into the most timely, topical, and important issues of the day, as well as a number of trainings that we do for functional areas in the business. On the communication side, we really act as the voice for the food industry. So we interface with, in addition to the lawmakers and regulators, NGOs, media, both trade and business, analysts, institutional investors, and increasingly in recent years, Sri, consumers themselves directly so that they have confidence in the food industry supply chain, given all the uncertainty and volatility we've faced over the last 4 or 5 years. In my role, I lead our industry practice. That's really the commercial side of the house. So we focus on collaboration. We bring trading partners together to accomplish things that either add efficiency to the business or help with, demand creation and looking for growth opportunities. We do bring the leadership of the industry together to identify and prioritize issues that need to be addressed at scale. And there are any number of those, but most recently, as you identified and Liz just said, and we're about to lean into, retail media networks are a front and center issue. And so we do things in I'll call it a non-competitive environment to help really sort of separate the wheat from the chaff, get some clarity on the issues, and create benchmarks and methodologies and frameworks that the industry can use in a more proprietary fashion.
Thank you for that, Mark. Thank you for that, Liz. Mark, as we go through this discussion, I'm hoping when it comes to retail media and the research y'all put out together, we'll hit up the advocacy, which hopefully is on the measurement piece, collaborate, bring the industry together on a common understanding, educate, of course, which is coach the industry on what's next, how to navigate this situation, which is taking quite a bit of the media budget, and then, of course, communicate outcome. So in the digital liner notes of this episode, we'll place links to your LinkedIn profiles, of course, both your company's pages, your company's websites. That way, the people that are listening to us, majority of them from the smartphones, can connect back with you straight from the smartphone as they listen to the show. So now for the first one. Maybe, Liz, you can go first, but Mark and Liz, why did you decide to partner on retail media? There are so many other topics that our industry, which are forefront of our industry, CPG and retail at this point. But why retail media and why now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say, and certainly Mark will chime in on this as well, but FMI and NielsenIQ have a history of tackling the big, hairy topics together. And starting kind of back in, 2015, 2016, we tackled what at the time was a similarly big, hairy topic around the digitally engaged food shopper. And now that feels, the omni shopper in food is so prevalent, right? But back in 2016, 2017, certainly pre-pandemic, we were looking to provide a point of view to the industry, not just on what the industry could expect in terms of the size of the prize and the opportunity, but also frameworks and tools and best practices, really from an unbiased sort of third-party perspective to help the industry participate. And that's what we're looking to do here again. Mark and I sat down, maybe a year ago, it seems like it was about a year ago now, and said, okay, what's the next big, hairy topic that we want to address together? And how can we be of best service in our role as sort of a third-party arbitrator of the industry to help? And this just really felt really ripe for that type of engagement, given all the conversation, the different levels of maturity across the industry. And so we decided to partner together to tackle it.
You touched retailers and brands, so why now? What are they telling you?
Well, I think, first of all, Liz set the context perfectly. Foundationally, we have a long-standing partnership. And if you think about the work we did on the digitally engaged food shopper, kind of at the birth of Omni, this was in some ways sort of a very natural, organic extension of that because they're inextricably linked in a lot of ways. And by the way, parenthetically, I might add, we're doing a refresh with Liz and her team on that digitally engaged food shopper work as well. But if you think about the evolution of media per se, and we went from mass to fragmentation, from consumer to trade, and just a couple of years ago started seeing the sort of the advent of these retail media networks. They're really at the very early stage. There's a lot of swirl. There's a lot of rumor and innuendo. There's a lot of piloting and testing. There's a lot of stuff going on. And when Liz and I talked about it, we said, okay, can we maybe break through the clutter a little bit? And to her point, in a very unbiased, objective fashion. And what kind of tools can we provide the industry to use at scale? And so that was kind of the genesis of our conversation. We're several months now into the work, and we're really excited to be sharing some of our preliminary observations with you.
Liz, Mark, welcome to the podcast. We're very happy to have you here. Before I ask my question, I'd be remiss if not recognizing that this is, in fact, Liz's sixth appearance on the CPG Guys. So we've been, Sri, somewhat remiss in awarding Liz the coveted 5-timer CPG Guys varsity jacket. So Liz, after the show, we'll be getting the details that we need to fit the jacket for you appropriately, but one will be on the way in very short order.
I can't wait. You guys always have the best swag, and I feel, frankly, like I'm missing something. So I can't wait.
Congratulations, Liz.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mark, you're on your way. You're 4 more away.
Getting into the game.
I didn't realize I'd been on that much, but no, I love chatting with you guys. So thank you for that.
That's great. So, Mark, let me start with you on this. What do you hope the industry will expect in a partnership between FMI and NielsenIQ? It seems like it's not a one-time effort. Liz made a reference to the digitally engaged food shopper, but that was a good 8 years ago. How do you hope to evolve this relationship, particularly as you go to deliver what I certainly anticipate, and I expect the industry will as well, as a critical piece of research that will help inform the direction Sri and I are so focused on it. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thanks, Peter, and thanks for the warm welcome. In addition to that, so first of all, I think that there are going to be expectations, but there's also a history and a track record. So we really put a stake in the ground with digitally engaged food shopper and Omni. So I think for the last number of years now, the industry really looks to us to provide the update on the evolution of that space, the size of the prize. Keep in mind that early on, we did our first forecast pre-COVID. And I think, Liz, we reconfigured it like 3 times in 1 year, and we were still understating it. So the industry really looks to us to be a beacon of information on these topics. And I think it's going to be no different now. You said, is this going to be sort of a one-time, one-off, land on an opinion, or will it be some sort of evolution? I'd suggest it's going to be the latter because the space is still somewhat embryonic. It's a little like the Wild West out there. That's part of what we're trying to do is to create some, maybe universal perspectives on this that companies then can shape to their individual strategies. So we see the work we're doing now, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in detail, as really phase 1 of an ongoing effort that stays stitched into the evolution and the maturity of the space going forward.
Liz, we'd love to get your opinion. What do you feel you would put out in this? What is the industry expecting really from NielsenIQ on this? And then is this a one-time effort? I think you kind of alluded to this is longer than a one-time effort.
Yeah, we tend to, as Mark said, really kind of put together research objectives that are phased intentionally. So we think about how do we provide a longitudinal and kind of ongoing perspective on a topic that we think has staying power. And, Mark and I certainly chuckle a bit about this now. Like no one could have predicted that there would be a hopefully once in a lifetime pandemic that came in and completely, interrupted our beautiful forecasts. But that is in fact the one variable that we probably didn't control for in the research that we had put out. And it does have staying power. That work has been used over and over and over again to help inform the industry as the industry has evolved to operating in an omni-channel capacity. And we're still not fully to right on that. I mean, I think everyone would say there are still organizational and change management challenges. There are still operational challenges. There are still, a whole host of talent challenges. Like all of these types of things still exist. And so, as Mark mentioned, we refresh that work to continue to provide help, support, and perspective. We'll do the same here with retail media. So that is certainly our objective. We believe this is a topic that's here to stay. If you look at sort of the enormous investment that's gone into establishing media networks, and similarly, the changes in process, in talent, in ways of working, and frankly, just the change management associated with that, the industry needs toolkits, and they need perspective and kind of that beacon that Mark mentioned to sort of help cut through some of the clutter. And there are very different points of view across the industry on how to operate in this space. And so we are looking to understand and seeking to understand those different points of view. We're looking to find commonality and find best practice paths forward. And we're looking to publish a set of tooling for the industry to be useful. And then we'll continue to update that that tooling as this space evolves.
I got to tell you, the industry definitely needs discipline in this space. I can't think of two better organizations to come together to kind of strive for that. Mark, from your side, to kind of coach, kind of do the four letters you had said: advocate, communicate, educate, as well as collaborate, and kind of land something that's meaningful for both brands, retailers, and kind of the service providers can follow as being leaders of one of the most important kind of organizations in CPG and retail. And then Liz, you guys as what I would call in simple English, the measurement captains of the world. So Mark, the next one's for you. I just mentioned, hey, it's FMI, most important conferences, most important organizations when it comes to this industry. Who's the desired audience for his research? Is it brands? Is it retailers? Is it service providers? Is it all of the above? And then where would the industry broadly find these results? Will there be a learning component? Is it a one-time white paper only, a repetition of a couple of white papers? Should the industry expect?
So the short answer to the audience question is yes, all of the above, and they're different. The retail media networks today are a little like the elephant in the dark room. We all know what it is, but the brands are touching the trunk and the retailers are touching the tail and the service providers are touching the tusks. It feels a little different. The lens is a little different. And so we have a broad audience, and it's really different, say, in CPG than in retail. And it's even interesting from a third party standpoint, if you think about the traditional agencies and their roles, as this is morphed. This is a little bit like role reversal, because retailers, for maybe the first time in a major way, they're selling their suppliers on marketing services. So it's different. And from a CPG, and by the way, to a large extent, until recently, Liz mentioned the talent issue. There wasn't a lot of talent there. I mean, retailers historically, the closest they came to really full-blown marketing, brand building exercises was advertising. And I'll say this at the risk of offending many of our members, it's generally pretty uninspiring. So, I mean, this is a sea change for them. And for brands, we've gone through, and you guys both know this well, this push and pull or tug of war internally between marketing and sales and consumer and trade, and where in the funnel this comes from. And then when you get to the third parties, the shift in their roles and responsibilities and all this. So the audience is broad. It's changing. There's a lot of learning to be done. Our preliminary set of interviews, which have been extraordinary, frankly, and Liz and her team and my team, we've learned a ton. And I'll just reiterate a point that both you and Peter made earlier, Sri, which is the industry's hungry for some inspired leadership on this. People are out there doing their own thing. Some are being more successful than others, but there needs to be some universality, some standards development. We'll talk more about this. So this is going to be an evergreen process. It's not just going to be a report. It's not going to be one and done. We're really going to build this out as the space matures.
The CPG Guys, for one, will eagerly be looking forward to what you guys put out together. Both of you are always welcome back on the show to come and share. The CPG Guys reach the entire industry, whether it's brands, retailers, or service providers, especially retail media captains will be eagerly listening to what you have to say on the show, because they're going to treat it as a holy book go forward. So Liz, it's very important, therefore, as I turn this over to Peter, he's going to jump into one of the most important questions that we have on this episode today.
Liz, so first of all, I'll say, Mark, I absolutely agree with you that there is a fundamental shift in the balance of power. The golden age of the brand up until the 1950s, with a very few large distribution retailers, allowed them to kind of control the conversation. Oftentimes, mom and pop retailers would pay all sorts of fees for the rights to get these national brands on their shelves, and that fundamentally shifted as the distribution was aggregated under a handful of big retailers. And they've been the economic buyers for the better part of 75 years, right? And suddenly now they're selling. And you can tell the balance of shift that's going on, because you never saw retailers going out into the field. They waited for the brands to come to them. They came to their headquarters. You go to trade shows now, and you go to Cannes, you go to CES, you see all of these retail media networks en masse appearing at these events because they are now, to your point, they are now economic sellers. And the buyers are the brand people that aren't necessarily driven the way trade-focused salespeople are. So there is a lot of tumult right now in how this is all going to play out. So I think your research is absolutely timely and poignant. Liz, sorry for my long-winded response there, but my question to you is, I'd like for you to share with our audience where NielsenIQ is positioned relative to your solutions around retail media, and how is this complementing your overall business?
Yeah, I will absolutely address that. And I do want to just build on something that you and Mark just alluded to, and maybe bring kind of an unexpected role that NIQ is playing in this space forward as a result of that. So you mentioned the unique sort of shift in responsibility or accountability that's happening for retailers. And as we've observed, retailers all looking for ways to continue to diversify their revenue streams and identify new ways to drive margin. Oftentimes, their businesses in this space start to look a lot like ours at NielsenIQ in terms of the type of solutions that they're selling to the brands, the way that they need to construct their teams, the way they need to incentivize their teams, the interactions effectively with the brands on an ongoing basis to ensure that there's value that's being driven, development of new analytical solutions, and constantly thinking about how do you not just continue to deliver the basics, but continue to elevate and drive additional value at every point. How do you prove that there's return on that investment? Those are things that we at NielsenIQ have been doing with our customers for 100 years, right? And so interestingly, we get asked, and I get called a lot to just consult on random things that I never expected to be called about, like, how should we set up our insights team? You guys have a huge insights organization. How should we set up our insights team? What should it look like? And I think there was always this fear that like we were going to somehow compete with these organizations. And the reality is there is so much opportunity for all of us to engage in this space and for us to be helpful that I really don't worry about that one bit. And so it is, I think, a unique role and a great kind of privilege that we can be involved in those conversations and helping to provide that guidance, because we do have so much experience in how to go to market with these types of things, with the CPGs in particular. But as we think about the role that we're going to play, more broadly, and this will evolve. I mentioned that we formed a global media division, earlier this year, and really announced that we are continuing to develop our capabilities in this space. But we also, with our acquisition of GfK, acquired, a number of businesses, and MRI Simmons has had a long-standing relationship with the agencies in particular and in the media space that we're building on as part of that GfK portfolio. So you will see us participate in everything from sort of data integration and enrichment on the retailer's own side with their customer data platforms. We have a ton of content that we're leveraging in partnership with retailers to enhance what they're putting, into their CDPs and clean rooms in order to enhance their T-log and loyalty information. We are helping with segmentation and targeting. We are helping with audience creation and development. We have a lot of unique content that can actually really enhance the ability to activate very specific audiences within the market, like our label insights characteristics, for example. And then certainly on the measurement space. And this is a space that we have a longstanding history, of obviously building strong measurement products. We believe for both CPGs and the RMNs, that we're going to be able to provide really, really novel solutions in this space. So closed loop measurement from an RMN perspective, being able to actually connect back to that original activation, but then also helping brands understand where they can best spend a dollar, so to speak, across the landscape of potential investment opportunities. And that's not just within the context of RMNs, but also just across all of the potential national media opportunities, for example, that exist for them. So it's going to be both.
I don't think we can overemphasize the importance of the measurement component, in particular, your bread and butter business. As brands move away from the more traditional format of mass audience awareness of print and linear television, right? They need to be sure that these mechanisms of retail media are delivering against the ROI, which you mentioned. And the fact of the matter is that all too often with 62 or 70 retail media networks in the country, measurement can be a bit of a black box. And if the RMNs want to see the promise of the revenue associated with retail media, it's got to be drawing from the brand budgets. If it's only drawing from the trade funds, right? Particularly when you have tech stack ecosystem partners, that's actually a net negative for a retailer. Like if I'm shifting from an in-store activation, an investment where I retain all of the investment against that, now I have to share it with a DSP and I have to share it with a clean room and I have to share it. All of that becomes, wait a minute, that wasn't why I built this mechanism. So measurement is going to be a critical component for brands to feel, okay, now is the time for me to shift at scale my investments to drive full funnel activation of our marketing and advertising capabilities through retail media. So I think that's critically important.
Yeah, and she said clean room. So Peter, do you and I have to go on a stock up buying spree of Lysol?
No, she meant not a cleaning closet, Shri. It's not where you keep the Windex. And no, we're talking about privacy safe environment, bringing data. We made Liz laugh. That was the most important thing, Shri, we did today.
Rooms and my mops and stuff.
I know, no mops, Shri. We're good.
Let me remind the public that today we're speaking with Liz Buchanan, president for NielsenIQ North America, as well as Mark Baum, CCO for none other than FMI. So Liz, let's talk about measurement. This space, retail media, has truly, genuinely suffered, if there was such a flow of grammar, and has had a lack of success from getting to a set of standards that are meaningful to all of retail, or even all of the vendor community, aka the manufacturers, for that matter. And that is literally the number one challenge that guests who come on this show talk about. Will Mark and you be taking it head on? And Mark, I'd love your opinion as well after Liz goes.
Yeah, I think it's a really good moment for us to listen to the industry in terms of there are a whole host of perspectives out there today, and some really good ones, frankly, on definitions of important kind of constructs for the RMN space, of methodologies that have been put forward for things like measurement. But we do know there's also some dissatisfaction across the landscape with some of those approaches, and also that there isn't a shared perspective, right, across the industry. So we have differences of opinion. And as I think it was Peter maybe mentioned a few minutes ago, there is a real desire as well for all parties in the industry to know that they're getting kind of an unbiased view of performance, and that you don't have, for example, people grading their own homework. And so I think we do expect to leverage this work that we're doing together with FMI, very much informed by dozens of industry partners, to help us develop a kind of common, framework for and methods for measurement that we hope will be adopted as an industry standard. And that certainly is a really nice kind of, a nice thing for then us as a measurement practitioner, so to speak, to adopt and to really evangelize in the solutions that we put forward to CPGs and to retailers. Mark?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Let me just build on what Liz is saying, because it goes back to the heart of the partnership. I think we both bring certain assets to this conversation, particularly around definition of terms and standard development and the like, that brings all of the consistency and credibility from a measurement standpoint that Nielsen possesses. And FMI as a place that's a sort of a safe haven where people feel like we can adopt, standards, common KPIs or what have you, and talk in a way that is consistent with the industry, with the FMI imprimatur on it, and going back to Liz's point, so it doesn't feel like it's one company's standard or a set of company standards vis-a-vis all the others. And right now, gentlemen, as you know, Liz said it, there are a lot of different opinions out there. There's a lot of good work being done. But the measures that retailers are using vary within the trade, and they often vary between them and their CPG suppliers. So we need to get some clarity around what's going to be universal. And, Peter, actually Liz referred to, these clean rooms. How far do we go with the use of first party data? At the end of the day, this is all about getting us better connected with that consumer. We're kind of losing sight of that in some respects, because from a retail standpoint, if you've got the assets, the margins are very attractive. But, remember, we're still in the business of selling, grocery products off shelves into consumers' baskets, physically, virtually, or otherwise. And as manufacturers, that's our common customer. So I don't know if we'll get to a standard per se. Liz and I haven't actually had this conversation or taken it all the way to Bright, because we're still learning from, the interviews that we're conducting. I do believe at the very least, we can come up with a series of common measurements or common KPIs that can be applied given your marketplace objectives. And I think that would go a long way. The other thing I think we can do, just to kind of maybe extend this conversation a bit, is I think part of our role, Liz has clients and customers that range from very, very small to very, very large, as we do at FMI. And you mentioned 65 retail media networks before. CPGs are not necessarily going to allocate across that many networks. So we're trying to democratize the opportunity across the business so that everyone can participate in a meaningful way. And then we can measure mutual ROI together.
Yep. Well said, Mark.
Yeah, Mark, I would actually emphasize that last point about brands are not able to effectively manage retail media investment across that many platforms. And as a result of that, most of the work, other than maybe the top 2 or 3 retailers in customers in the brand portfolio, the brands are managing those directly. Everything else is being done by the trade. And that effectively is also meaning that the investment oftentimes, if not almost exclusively for the tail end of the retail media networks, is coming from the trade. And as I mentioned earlier, that's not a sustainable strategy for these networks. I agree. There's got to be some consolidation. There's got to be some alliances that give brands the national scale they need to execute. And so they can be invested in working with these platforms. So I think there's a lot. And I also think you hit on something, both of you, that was particularly relevant to me, is it's about creating audiences and using clean rooms and some of the data that brands bring with them intermingled in a privacy safe environment with retailers to ultimately create scaled high value audiences, right? Shoppers that are shopping in particular categories and particular propensities that say to a brand, this is really someone that I want to engage with. And if retail media provides me with the mechanism in a full funnel way to find them and then start the customer journey and bring them along the customer journey to conversion, that's the promised land, right? So Mark, let me turn to you around this increasingly connected omni-channel world. As you talk to your FMI members, how focused are they on retail media in brand boardrooms? What is the connection to retail, and do they see this, or maybe where in the priority list do they see this as a mechanism to help them grow their brand equity?
So, yeah, great question, because it's all over the map. I mean, everybody sees this as extremely important because, it's front and center every day, right? As we used to say, it's like front page above the fold. Everybody's talking about it. Some companies are doing something about it. Some companies are really on the left-hand side of the learning curve and don't know much more about it than it exists. And by the way, that is part of why Liz and I and our organizations are collaborating together, because we need to educate the industry. There's a lot of education that needs to be done. They're talking about it in boardrooms. Of course, that's not where it gets executed. And the conversation around those conference tables varies depending on who's in the room. But ultimately, it's another shift towards how do we meet consumers where they want to be met, with what they want to be met, how they want to be met. And what are the tools we can use to affect that moment of truth, right? When the consumer is going to decide to buy or not to buy. And that's why a lot of companies are evaluating their assets, their in-store assets, their digital assets, and otherwise. And if you keep that, I believe the consumer is really sort of the beginning and the end of our value chain, which is actually circular, not linear. And if you use that as your North Star, we will, and I like to use this analogy, we will connect the head to the body. So all the conversations that are happening in boardrooms actually get implemented through the functional areas of the business and right down to store or online or whatever that asset being utilized is going to be for the consistently measured return that we've been talking about all morning.
Yeah, Mark, I want to follow up on this because I think it's important to recognize, and I'll ask you this question, and I hope you're going to tease this out in some of the research you're getting. I'm concerned that too many brands are still kind of outsourcing the retail media understanding and strategy to agencies. They're not necessarily making it an intrinsic part of the DNA of a marketer. Maybe they're part of the way there, but they're still in the center of excellence. Like, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about an industry now that last year racked up about $50 billion in domestic revenue, projected to go to $100 billion by the end of 2029. If a CMO doesn't understand, at a brand doesn't understand how to build a retail media plan into their overall marketing strategy, isn't that kind of derelict? I mean, what's going on here?
I like that use of derelict. I was once referred to as derelict in a former life many, many years ago. So it's you have to look at it along a continuum. I'm old enough. I don't know that anybody else in this podcast is old enough to remember when all of marketing and media was done in-house. Okay. We owned all of the talent. It was probably a much larger part of the strategy because, again, this was pre-media fragmentation. You had 3 major networks. You had your traditional print revenues and outdoors and the like. And basically, agencies were media buyers to a large extent. And then over time, for a variety of reasons, to your point, Peter, that started being outsourced, particularly when you saw the massive shift from consumer to trade. And then the sales team owned most of that talent, and there wasn't a place to really outsource it unless you were, say, SMA broker represented. Now you're seeing that pendulum shift back. So I don't have a crystal ball. And as one of our members said to me recently, none of us should be in the business of making too much in the way of projections and forecasts because all of our crystal balls are cracked. But having said that, your point is very well taken. I think you're going to see more CPG companies take more ownership of that from the CMO's office. There's still going to be a lot of sort of politicking and pushing and pulling between the marketing department and the sales department. And even within marketing, that's become fragmented with digital and physical and the like. And the other thing is going to be from a retail standpoint. Most retailers, by definition, had to outsource this because they didn't have the talent in-house to even know how to build a plan, much less execute and measure against it. You're starting to see some of those RMNs come in-house. To your point, it's a matter of control. It's a matter of taking accountability. And we're talking about a lot of money. And if we look back 5 years from now and we say, could be $150, $200 billion business. And if we're throwing good money after bad, for what?
Fair enough. He says he's old enough to remember things from the industry. The only circular, you refer to a circular reference of retail media. The only circular I grew up with, Mark, has 16 sheets of paper in it. It was the only way to get either feature display or both feature and display.
There's still a few of them out there, Sri.
They still drive a lot of business for a lot of retailers.
Yeah, that's the way the kind of industry shaped itself, right? That's just the reality of the situation. So, Liz, here's we're going to throw you a knuckleball curveball here from Mr. Tim Wakefield, who The Yankees were his daddy, by the way. Thanks to Aaron Boone. I couldn't miss that one. Retail media effectiveness at the end of the day is like media effectiveness. The ROI has to be over there, and the ROI needs to be measurable in the first place. But at the end of the day, you ask most leaders, especially CMOs, what's the metric that matters? They don't talk about ROAS, iROAS, hands-on keyboards, worries about all those measures. They only care about volume and share. So market tracking, POS market tracking will matter the most here. How are you guys as stewards in the industry for market measurement, connecting your POS market tracking to media, aka retail media effectiveness, and are brands actually calibrating on this and asking you for it?
Oh yeah. Okay. So very good question, and complicated at the same time. I think going back just a second, like this isn't the first time that we've tackled or been confronted with something like this that we need to tackle. I think it was very similar when digital media and the opportunity to continue to invest or begin to invest in kind of the digital media and social media landscape, came on the scene. And there was a need in the industry for a single solution that was validated and trusted, that could provide kind of that performance measurement understanding. But, I will say volume and share obviously are at the end of the day what matter and what we need to be able to demonstrate the investments are moving the needle on, but they are in fact a function of consumers and shoppers taking action. So whenever possible, we do use consumer-based sort of deterministic assets for media assessment. I think that's going to be continue to be true. It's why there is such an important emphasis today placed on the concept of closed loop, because if you're starting with T-log and loyalty and you're ending with T-log and loyalty or consumer source data, the ability to really tie back, being exposed to advertising and then being able to actually demonstrate that you were able to affect a purchase. I mean, at just the most basic level. But yes, because of, the quality and granularity of point of sale data where, consumer source may not be available for privacy, legal, other reasons, or where it just makes sense that we leverage some of our unique assets in this space, we will obviously be including that in our measurement capabilities. I think this is one of the areas I'm most excited about, because the opportunity to think differently, especially in the sort of era of, cloud computing and AI and generative AI, about how we leverage all of these assets to actually build models and capabilities that are far more sophisticated, but also perhaps a little bit more elegant than what we've been able to do in the past, and elegant in terms of the ability to deliver results in more real time, for example, the ability to be a bit more granular and hyper-personal, et cetera, and to be able to really toggle between the view that's required for a retailer and the view that's required for a brand, are some of the things that we aim to solve as we're continuing to innovate and do R&D around this measurement space. And obviously that will all be informed by the work that we're doing here with FMI.
So, ma'am, not only do I have to worry about getting to the store and buying Clorox and wipes, and I got to worry about rain clouds, and this is LA. We're worried about flooding and rainfall.
I know. Well, Chicago has a very climate resistant and resilient environment. You're welcome here anytime, Shri. Anytime.
And that's the price you pay for living in paradise, Shri.
Yeah, listen, earlier this year with all that flooding, Shri was this close to building an ark out back of his house in anticipation. In any event, so I get the pleasure of asking you the last question. Let's look towards the future. I'd love to hear from each of you. I'll go to Mark first. What are some of the trends you're both following in the industry beyond retail media? Maybe it's some of the information that you picked up as you're doing these interviews. AI is certainly hot. Would love to know how you're thinking about those trends and making sure that retail media isn't like taking up every ounce of attention that your organizations are focused on. There's certainly a lot of money behind it, but There are all sorts of other levers of growth. Would love to hear. Let's start with you, Mark, and then I'll turn to Liz.
Sure. Well, given the state of the industry, Peter, you'll maybe be pleased to know that retail media networks are not sucking all the oxygen out of the room. There are no shortages of issues, challenges, and opportunities. We blueprint our imperative issues at FMI. I've shared them with Liz and some others. So, in no particular order, just in the interest of time, because we can click 1, 2, 3 levels down on any one of these. I'll say, and Liz just mentioned a couple, technology, both emerging and proven technology, automation, critical issue, artificial intelligence, both general and generative. We're leaning very heavily into that. We're doing a lot of work there. Underpinning all of that, we're still doing a lot of work on data, just complete and accurate data, which informs so many of these other functional areas of the business. We're doing a lot of work in supply chain as we kind of reset, future-proof, reimagine a dynamic supply chain, also in the context of what we're talking about here today in an omni-channel world. I can't escape a conversation, particularly at the C-suite, without talking about workforce. And that's everything from the front line to the boardroom and everywhere in between. And we can look at that in a lot of ways. And that is also inextricably linked to the technology issue at every level of the organization as well. Just a couple more like sustainability. That ebbs and flows. We have a lot around food waste, packaging, circularity, particularly on one-time use of plastics. But more importantly, Sri, you'll love this because you live in LA, climate. And specifically around climate, carbon measurement, and more specifically around that, scope 3, which your indirects, which, you rely on your trading partners up and downstream to address. One other thing I'll just mention, and Liz is, and her team partner with us on this a lot, consumer. You can never know enough about your consumer. So we track consumer. And just when you think you've got them figured out, they go and do something else because they're human after all. So understanding consumer trends and meeting them both with, what they need and how they need it is really important. And the last thing I'll just say, because it has been consuming us for the last almost 2 years now, is end-to-end traceability. We have a large portfolio of food and product safety services. It's no deep, dark secret that, the industry has suffered quite a few blows in recent months with these incidents of recalls. The FDA Rule 204, which is the end-to-end traceability rule, has a sunrise compliance date of January 2026, which is a lot closer than it sounds. So you can be sure, folks, that we've been working on this 24/7 cross-functionally within our enterprise and across our membership, to name just a few.
Just a couple there. Liz, over to you.
That's such a good list. I'm trying to figure out what I can add that's actually helpful here. I think maybe just one thing. We're focused on a lot of the same things that Mark just mentioned, and we're actually doing a lot in partnership with Mark and his team on a number of those topics. The number one thing that we get asked about, and it is future important, it's current day important, and it's historically been important, is just how do we get a return to baseline volume growth? How do we get households back into our business and our brand, and into our stores, physical or virtual? So growth playbooks around those topics, and retail media actually is a component of that, certainly. But there are just some back to basics things that really need to be addressed across the industry, and that we're working on quite a bit. And we're trying to use all of the, newest capabilities of generative AI and so our platform and Discover and Ask Arthur and all of the things that we've been investing in to help do that in a way that's, more turnkey, more real time, and even more useful. We continue to also, related to consumer, be really bullish on deeply understanding and predicting the impact of Gen Z and across the world, and the role that they're going to play as the dominant, the dominant holders of purchasing power in the very near term, and the unique sort of profile that they bring to the table, the value system that they bring to the table, and the way that it will change and evolve. Not only the way that brands need to show up, but retailers need to engage, so the whole host of whole host of things related to those two topics. And then we are enormously interested in and continue to innovate around the balance between what we call HI and AI, so human intelligence and artificial intelligence. And I think that's a topic that our whole industry, it really is pursuing in different ways. But how do we continue to not only make human intelligence a real asset for us in developing artificial intelligence, but what is the role of human intelligence in a world where AI plays a bigger and bigger role in what we do every day?
And Liz, you reminded me I need to get you to put Ask Arthur on Sherie's desktop, because right now his primary strategy for getting answers is Ask Peter. And I get way too many phone calls.
Oh my goodness. I think you guys, you may have just branded your own AI assistant there for CPG Guys. I think the industry would use that, actually. Let me know if you want to collaborate.
Well, what a fun episode. But Mark, unfortunately on the climate change piece here in California, Southern California, for the last 3 years that I've lived here, starting about early December through February, we have at least 3 days of rainfall every single week for nonstop for 13 or 14 weeks, which clearly wasn't the case as a dry climate area where insurance companies have abandoned the state. So it doesn't add up whatsoever. But let me remind the audience that you can find all of our content by simply going to a web browser and typing cpgguys.com as the URL. And if you think you or your company has thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, please send us an email at contact@cpgguys.com, and maybe you can join us on the podcast like Mark and Liz did today. Please don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com in the navigation bar up top. The rating actually tells us how we're doing. The review tells us whether having the right conversation with the right guest, so we do appreciate it. To all our followers, especially on LinkedIn, Peter and I cannot say thank you enough times. We're living the dream of, this wasn't built to be a dream, but this is the reality of the situation. And we can't thank you enough for the clicks, likes, DMs, the meetups at conferences, wanting to take pictures with us, which is still comical to both of us. Liz said it at the beginning, we actually have swag thanks to all of you for meeting with us, doing podcasts with us at conferences, online, offline. We're perennially thankful. Liz and Mark, I can't thank you enough for making time on a Friday morning and joining us to actually put this podcast episode together. So thank you to the both of you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys so much. And by the way, there are so many other things I'd love to talk about, but really, I've got a lot of FOMO right now because I need some of that CPG guy swag.
There will be some forthcoming, and with all the work that I'm sure we're going to be doing over the coming year, Mark, that 5-timer varsity jacket, it's in the bag. So Mark, one thing you'll learn is, since we are hardwired from the industry, we think of CPG Guys swag as occasions, perhaps a tumbler for your all-day drinking occasion, water, Pepsi, whatever the case might be, coffee, and we make sure it's a thermos that can do hot and cold. Then there'll be winter occasion, there'll be summer occasion. So we think of seasonality when it comes to clothing. If it gets too hot, we make sure we have a hat. If it gets too warm and the sunlight, we make sure we have sunglasses. So we're need state based. This is a subtle way for Sheree saying there's never been a piece of swag that we don't want. So yes, we have a large collection. We have lots of CPG.
You've thought about it all, and you are a full service media company, I will say.
We are.
Peter, the most fun part of this episode is when you get to recap our learnings. Why don't you take a couple minutes, tell us what we learned from Liz and Mark and where the industry is therefore headed, because this is an important piece of research. I would use the word groundbreaking, like a first ever type that takes on measurement, kind of talks about the future, tries to bring the industry together, brands, retailers, and service providers. Thoughts, Peter?
Yeah, I thought it was great for Mark describing what FMI does. The Food Marketing Institute is global in nature. It's U.S. centric, but it has members in over 170 countries, and they're focused on advocacy, collaboration amongst the different constituencies and the partners, communicating and educating in the industry. And they've partnered with NielsenIQ to tackle what Liz called some BHAGs that are really around digital consumer engagement where Nielsen has a tremendous amount of data and experience, and together they can provide clarity to the industry. They've built a phased research objective with the longitudinal view of shopper engagement. The reality is retail media strategy is here to stay. At its growth rate and its an overall volume, it's not just an interesting little channel that we can operate in. It's fundamentally becoming a prime mechanism for brands understanding the return on their advertising investment, but that the industry needs perspective, right? They're looking to understand how they can deliver best-in-class outcomes. And that means research is going to drive their ability to understand that. I love Mark's description of an elephant in the dark room. We all find different parts, but we don't quite have a complete picture of the fact that we're there with a big elephant. There is a hunger for inspired leadership in retail media. They're hoping to provide some of that. I know, Sri, that's something you and I talk about, and it's something that we're working on with Cornell right now in anticipation of next year being able to get all those people in the room, probably take a lot of the research that we're going to get from FMI and NielsenIQ to help guide our direction. That NielsenIQ's role is helping develop capabilities in retail media. That was loud and clear. Data integration, measurement, particularly in a closed loop environment, bringing those best practices to bear, understanding how you leverage clean rooms and assets owned by multiple parties. You don't need to own all the data. You just need to be able to access the data in a privacy safe manner. That's going to yield the measurements that you need. I love the description of both customer segmentation, ultimately audience creation, because the goal here is, can I build an audience, have it of sufficient scale that I can move the needle as I start to engage them at different points on the customer journey? And NIQ is going to help retail media networks. I love the fact that they're coming to NIQ saying, listen, you guys have got expertise here. And NIQ is smart enough to say, we don't see this as a competitive situation. We see this as very complementary, and it's helping grow the overall business. And as the volume shifts away from non-measurable, open loop mechanisms, and I sometimes describe marketing mix modeling as a bit of alchemy, but I think it still plays an important role in how brands look at things. But as we move to a closed loop measurement system, I think it gives a lot more confidence to brands as they invest. There is a concern, though, from a lot of brands that right now retail media networks and their measurement approaches are a bit of a black box, and they might be grading their own homework, and we need to dissuade that kind of a thought process and an activation from being the mechanism by which RMNs operate. There's got to be transparency in consistency in how you approach that. Mark made a good point. The same KPIs don't apply to different types of campaign objectives. How you measure a new product launch is fundamentally different than how you approach maintaining a brand with highly developed items. You're trying to drive awareness in the first case. In the second case, you're much more about trying to maintain the volume that you've already established. But at the end of the day, brands, to some degree, in looking at, and Sheree brought this up, and Liz kind of articulated this, in connecting POS transaction to media, brands are still seeking, a single version of the truth, where they can say, how do I connect that? Volume and share, I love that she described, they are still outcomes of consumer behavior to a large degree. And insights must come from closed loop deterministic data sets. That's why clean rooms are so very important, because at the end of the day, you want to be able to do at scale, hyper-personalized influence of the customer journey and figure out what are the different components of that yield the best outcomes so that you can invest more efficiently and get at Mr. Wanamaker's objective of identifying which of the 50% of his sales are ineffective, right? And wow, what a great list Mark provided around beyond just retail media, focusing on technology, automation, AI, data, supply chain, workforce, sustainability, consumer insights and end-to-end traceability. Really, really great, great points. And Liz adding to that, the human intelligence and the artificial intelligence, how do those interact to develop the best possible outcomes? Great conversation, Shri. I, for one, am so anticipating the production of the research report that we're going to see delivered come the FMI midwinter executive conference down in Florida. It's going to be a really, really great time. I know the CPG guys are excited to be there as well.
Yeah, and Mark and Liz, we hope that you'll choose CPG Guys as one of the platforms to actually share and disseminate the research findings and the study. Mark, you mentioned several other topics that Peter just mentioned that you guys are working on at FMI. You are always welcome back on the show so that the industry can indeed hear from you directly on what FMI is leading in the marketplace. So we'll look forward to having you back on the show as well. With that, I'll say thank you, Mark. Thank you, Liz. Thank you for that awesome recap, Peter. That's a wrap of this episode of the CPG Guys.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.